Joyride. I'm getting out of this. As the water started filling her lungs, that was the blaring refrain pounding through Lorna's brain once panic mode officially set in. The car had impacted the railing at roughly 75 miles per hour, more than enough force to crumple the highway's protective steel beams and send the brand new, cherry red 2024 BMW M3 over the side. One moment there had been road beneath them. The next, there had been nothing but air, screaming metal, and Carrie's voice tearing through the space beside her as if outrage might somehow reverse gravity. For a strange second during the fall, time slowed. Lorna hated that it did. She hated that there had been anything close to beauty in it. Her hair lifted wildly around her face, bits of glass spun in the air. The lights of the bridge fractured through the broken windshield. Her stomach rose into her throat, and there was a brief, terrible feeling of weightlessness that almost felt like freedom. She would be lying if she said she did not feel a pang of euphoria during the hang time. She would also be lying if she said that feeling survived the impact. The BMW hit the river hard enough to make the world disappear. Water slammed through the shattered front. It came in cold, fast, and filthy. The river punched the breath out of her before she had a chance to take a clean one. The car tilted nose first, and the black water swallowed the dashboard, the center console, the expensive leather seats Carrie had spent an entire week bragging about as if the car had given birth to itself just for him. Now the thing he loved almost as much as himself was dragging them down, and for once in 23 years, Carrie had nothing useful to say. Lorna's shoulder had broken on impact. She knew that before the pain fully arrived because something inside her had gone loose and wrong. Then the pain came anyway. It lit up her left side with a sharp electric cruelty that made her vision flash white. She was a natural lefty and had never considered herself ambidextrous, but with that kind of pain dancing through her dominant arm at the slightest movement, she was ready to convert on the spot. She fumbled with her right hand for the seatbelt release, but a thick rush of bubbles blocked her view, and the water made every movement feel slow and stupid. I'm getting out of this now. Her body disagreed, her shoulder disagreed. Her lungs, already burning, disagreed most of all. She had exhaled too fast when fear took over, wasting what little oxygen she had managed to trap inside herself. She knew better. Somewhere in the back of her mind, beneath the panic and pain, she could hear her mother's voice from those forced diving lessons in middle school, telling her to slow down, hold steady, and stop fighting the water like it had a personal problem with her. Her mother had been dead 12 years, still nagging, still right. Lorna fought against the seatbelt, fingers sliding over the buckle. The cabin was filling quickly now, and the car was descending faster than her mind could accept. The world outside the windows was not a world at all anymore. It was murk, movement, darkness, and the faintest blur of city lights far above. Carrie thrashed in the driver's seat, his face cut open, his mouth stretched wide in a scream that came out as bubbles. Blood moved around his head in thin red clouds. His hands slapped at the wheel, the door, the belt, anything that might save him from the decision she had made. That was when Lorna remembered exactly what brought her there. Not the road, not the rain, not the argument that had started over eggs and ended with his hand on her neck in the supermarket parking lot because she had looked too long at the cashier when he asked if she needed help. Not even the way Carrie had driven too fast afterward, furious in that quiet way that was always worse than yelling. Those things had only been the final inches of a rope that had been tightening around her for more than 2 decades. She remembered the bruises on her back and legs, always placed where clothing could cover them. Carrie had learned that early. He was careful when he wanted to be. He could smile at neighbors and carry groceries for elderly women. He could shake hands with pastors, remember birthdays, and say the right thing at company dinners. He could make strangers feel lucky to know him. He saved the rest for home. She remembered lying awake beside him, staring at the ceiling, praying for death's release before enduring one more second, cowering in fear of another one of Carrie's blind rages. She remembered how many times she had apologized for things she had not done, how many times she had cleaned blood from her lip before anyone could see, how many times she had laughed off a limp, a wince, a flinch. She remembered learning the map of his moods better than she knew the streets of the town she had lived in her whole life. She remembered shrinking herself until she could fit into the small, airless space his cruelty allowed. Then she remembered his hand leaving the wheel to strike her, again, while the car flew down the wet road, while he cursed her for ruining his night, his life, his dinner, his reputation, and every other thing he believed she had been put on earth to damage. She remembered seeing the railing ahead. She remembered a thought that did not feel like panic at all. It had been calm, clear, almost polite. No more. She had grabbed the steering wheel and pulled. Now the BMW was sinking, and in a deep, true place inside of her, Lorna solemnly agreed that pulling on the steering wheel was the best decision she had ever made. Looking over to the driver's seat beside her, she hazarded a guess that Carrie might disagree. He was still screaming through blood and river water, though perhaps not for much longer. That was all the motivation she needed. She forced herself to stop thrashing. She pressed her tongue to the roof of her mouth and held what breath remained. Her right hand found the buckle again. Her fingers were clumsy, numb, and trembling, but she made them work. Carrie's eyes found hers through the water. There was accusation in them first, because of course there was. Even dying, he looked offended that she had inconvenienced him. Then the accusation shifted into fear, real fear, the kind he had put in her so many times. The belt release clicked. Maybe it was the lack of oxygen, and maybe it was a different and deadlier kind of euphoria setting in, but Lorna was sure she heard the sound. The belt ripped loose across her torso and snapped against her broken shoulder. Pain tore through her so hard both of them screamed at once, one into the river, one into blood. Carrie looked up at her with pleading eyes. Those eyes begged for a second chance. They tried in a millisecond to apologize for 23 years of unspeakable degradation, humiliation, and the sick enjoyment he had taken from her suffering from the moment he said, "I do." Looking into his wide, terrified gaze, Lorna knew his penance was sincere. Carrie had finally seen himself. He had finally understood what he was, because death had done what decency never could. If he could take it all back in that very moment, he would have. There was only one problem. Lorna didn't give a single fuck. She turned away from him. It was not dramatic. There was no grand speech, no last moral victory, no need for her to explain herself to a man who had spent half her life making explanations useless. If Carrie wanted forgiveness, he would have to find it elsewhere. Maybe at the bottom of the river, maybe not at all. Lorna had other business. She tucked her legs down and planted both feet against the passenger seat. Her shoulders screamed, her lungs burned, the water pressed against her eyes and ears. She pushed with everything left in her body, and her light frame shot upward through the cabin. Her hands scraped against torn metal near the broken windshield. Something cut her thigh. She kicked harder, forcing herself through the jagged opening where glass had been moments before. For one awful second, her jacket caught. Panic returned fast, mean, and stupid. She twisted, tugged, and felt the fabric hold. Below her, Carrie's hand moved. Whether he was reaching for her or merely drowning did not matter. Lorna ripped herself free, leaving part of the jacket behind. Then she was outside the car. The cold river closed around her completely. The BMW dropped beneath her, its headlights still glowing weakly in the gloom. Carrie's face disappeared behind the windshield frame. His mouth was still open, his hands still moved. Then the car sank deeper and darkness took it away. Lorna kicked toward the surface. Her body wanted to quit, that was the strange part. After years of surviving Carrie, after years of bracing, enduring, calculating, and waking each morning with the grim surprise of still being alive, her body now seemed ready to surrender because of a little water and one broken shoulder. The thought annoyed her enough to keep her moving. Not now, she thought, absolutely not now. Her lungs convulsed. She swallowed river water and nearly lost the last of her control. Her mother's old lessons rose again, as bossy as ever. Don't claw, kick, don't waste motion. Up is where the light is. Lorna found the light, faint and trembling above her, and drove herself toward it with ugly, stubborn strokes that would have disappointed any swim instructor but would have done just fine for anyone interested in living. The surface broke over her face. Air came in wrong. She coughed, choked, and dragged in another breath that tasted like gasoline, river muck, and blood. For several seconds she could do nothing but sputter and flail, her broken shoulder hanging uselessly, her legs churning beneath her. The bridge loomed above. Traffic had stopped. People were shouting from somewhere far away. Red brake lights lined the road, and someone screamed that a car had gone over. Helpful, Lorna thought, coughing again. Very sharp crowd. She treaded water with one arm and both legs, fighting the pull of her soaked clothes. Her body shook so hard her teeth clicked together. Pain came in fresh waves now that she could breathe enough to feel it properly. Her shoulder was bad. Her ribs might have been worse than she first thought. Her left thigh was bleeding, though not badly enough to care about yet. She had lost one shoe. The other remained on her foot, which struck her as rude. If one had escaped, surely the other should have had the decency to follow. A man leaned over the bridge railing and shouted, "Hold on." Lorna almost laughed. Hold on to what, exactly? Still, she lifted her good arm enough for them to see her. The motion made her sink for half a second, and the river tried to reclaim her. She kicked harder, cursing through chattering teeth. A rescue boat would come, police would come, questions would come. She had known that before she ever touched the wheel. What happened? Were you fighting? Did he lose control? Why did you grab the steering wheel, Mrs. Vale? She wondered what she would tell them. She wondered what she would tell Carrie's sister, who had once taken her aside at Thanksgiving and whispered that men like Carrie needed patience. She wondered what she would tell the neighbors who had heard shouting for years and somehow mistook it for a private matter. She wondered what she would tell the family members who liked their version of her better when she was quiet, bruised, and still bringing potato salad to cookouts with a smile. She wondered what she would tell her guilty conscience. Probably shut the hell up. The truth was that she did not care, not in the way she was supposed to, not in the soft, broken, performative way people would expect from a wife who had just watched her husband sink inside his favorite car. Carrie was dead or dying below her, and the most honest part of Lorna did not mourn him. It did not even tremble, it stretched. All that mattered now was her, for maybe the very first time in her life. The river was cold enough to punish. Her shoulder pulsed with pain. Sirens wailed closer. She could hear voices now, more organized, more urgent. Someone threw something down from the bridge, a flotation ring attached to a rope. It hit the water several feet away. "Grab it," someone shouted. Lorna kicked toward it, slowly, badly alive. Her good hand closed around the ring. The rope went tight. As they pulled her toward the riverbank, Lorna turned her face toward the water where the BMW had vanished. There were bubbles still rising from below, fewer now, then none. She waited for some last stab of regret, some human feeling to prove she was not the monster Carrie had spent 23 years telling her she was. Nothing came. Well, not nothing. A small smile did. She was too cold to enjoy it properly, too exhausted to hold herself, too busy trying not to drown after going through all the trouble of becoming a widow. If she did not have to keep treading, she might have patted herself on the back. Since that seemed impractical, she settled on remembering joy and trying it on for size. It fit better than she expected. By the time the rescuers dragged her from the river, Lorna was shaking violently. Hands wrapped blankets around her. Someone asked her name. Someone else told her not to move. A paramedic shined a light in her eyes, and she had the unpleasant urge to slap it away. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" She nodded. Was there anyone else in the vehicle? Lorna stared past him toward the river. For a moment, all she could see was Carrie at 31, standing at the altar with his charming smile and clean shave, promising to love and honor her in front of God, family, and a room full of people who had clapped for the lie. Then she saw him at 37, squeezing her arm hard enough to bruise because she had corrected him in public. Then 42, crying afterward and saying he hated himself. Then 48, not crying anymore. Then 53, striking her in the car while cursing her for forgetting eggs. The paramedic repeated the question. "Ma'am, was there anyone else in the vehicle?" "My husband," she said. The word came out clean. The paramedic looked toward the river, then toward the divers preparing to go in. "Okay, we're going to take care of you." That almost made her laugh too. People loved saying that after the worst had already happened. They put her on a stretcher. The sky above her was black and flashing with emergency lights. Rain fell lightly now, touching her face in cold specks. She thought about dinner waiting to be made. Carrie had wanted eggs because Carrie always wanted something and always made wanting it someone else's emergency. She had been planning omelets, toast, and coffee. The idea seemed absurd now. Domestic, tiny, something belonging to a woman she no longer intended to be. At the ambulance, a police officer leaned in with a notepad. "Mrs. Vale, I know this is difficult, but can you tell me what happened?" Lorna closed her eyes. She could tell him Carrie had been driving too fast. That was true. She could tell him the road was wet. True again. She could tell him they had argued. True, but useless. She could tell him she had pulled the wheel and chosen the river over another year of waking up beside that man. Also true, though not the kind of truth men with notepads tended to appreciate. "I don't remember everything," she said. That was true enough to live with. The officer nodded with the solemn patience of a man who had heard many lies and accepted most of them when paperwork required it. He asked a few more questions. She answered in pieces. The paramedics fussed over her shoulder, and that gave her permission to groan instead of elaborate. Pain, Lorna was discovering, could be useful when properly timed. They loaded her into the ambulance. As the doors closed, she caught one last view of the bridge, the crowd, the ropes, the divers, the river holding its secrets for a little while longer. Somewhere down there, Carrie was strapped into the car he had loved, his hands perhaps still clenched, his mouth perhaps still open, his apology trapped where it belonged. Lorna leaned back. Her body hurt, her future was uncertain. The police would ask more questions. Carrie's family would put on black and perform disbelief. People would whisper. Insurance companies would pry. There would be forms, funerals, and rooms full of people telling her she was lucky to be alive. They would be right. They just would not know why. Lorna thought to herself, it's not every day you head out for eggs and come back with renewed hope. A new life. Lorna smiled to herself then. Tonight dinner would have to wait.